The Odyssey pretty much took over my timeline last week. And not just because I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, but I think what he's doing with the Odyssey paired up with what's happening with like the IMAX marketing is some of the most interesting marketing that's happening right now. So the movie's opening on July 17th, and basically the campaign has three pieces that point back to the same argument. There's the demand crash, which is the IMAX pre-sale tickets were super like hard to get. They sold out. I think the AMC app broke down a couple times. And then, Universal and IMAX pretty much didn't say anything. They just, kept, pretty quiet, which is kind of crazy to think about because IMAX is a brand that's doing super well right now. So you would think they want to get people on their side saying, they just didn't anticipate this many people wanting to, buy tickets. Obviously, there's the underlying layer of, the whole idea that this is the first time that movie tickets are starting to get scalped, where it's like, you have scalpers trying to resell them for like thousands of dollars, right?
Mm.
The other thing is the format assignments for the different films. So I saw all the stars, basically Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Tom Holland, all come out to do like little, adverts for all the different formats, which I think was great. One of the first examples we talked about here of like marketing that I thought was like spot on was Ryan Coogler talking about the different formats for Sinners. And then the other thing was the interactive website where you could basically see on the website the different standards of the scenes coming through, where you could compare IMAX versus the standard aspect ratios. So I really like that they're pairing that up. They
Mm.
also threw in the popcorn bucket, right? Like today, actually, they just released the Trojan Horse popcorn bucket, which is for the movie The Odyssey, but they're also selling an IMAX camera along with it, which I thought was like really interesting. And
It's all
then
about the
last,
merch. It's all about the
right? I,
merch.
I think it's like super interesting that they're going in that direction, right? And then the last thing I saw yesterday, Letterboxd announced that they're now gonna let you designate which format you watch the movie in, which I think is going to do super well for the community because that most of the people that are going to watch this movie are cinephiles. They love movies. They want to prove, they want that social proof of like how they watched the movie. Dino, would love to know your thoughts.
Yes, I'm not a movie buff.
Mhm.
My kids make fun of me. I have a 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they know when I say, "Hey, you want to watch a movie?" That means Dad wants to take a nap. Even when we go to the cinema. But this is one of those movies where, I mean, I'll be honest, there just aren't that many great movies these days that
Mm,
are worth going to see and staying awake for.
mhm.
This is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And, most of the movies that I see these days are family friendly. And so
Mhm.
they're not really going to keep me on the edge of my seat. This
Did y'all see
one,
Project Hail Mary? I would say that's the
I haven't
last
seen it
one.
yet.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, wow, you missed out. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
definitely
did.
one I would have suggested watching on like the big format screen.
I've heard so many great things about it. And honestly, I have not heard that much about the Odyssey, but that's also
Mm,
because I'm a creature who doesn't live on social media that much. The only platform
mm,
I'm really on is LinkedIn. But I have heard from my cinephile friends, and they keep talking about formats.
mhm,
And one thing is very clear from this campaign that they're really pushing the PLF, the premium large format
mhm,
concept. What's interesting, as you were talking, I mean, there have been what I've been doing is using meltwater data to sort of analyze what the conversation looks like around this because
mhm,
since I moved to LA about 8 years ago, I've been fascinated with how my world collides with LA and Hollywood. And that is the changing media consumption habits and social media and how they promote movies and how you can have a star like Brad Pitt still be such a big star, but
mhm,
have no social media versus everybody else has to really hustle on social
mhm.
media. And so here, what they've done is if you look at this cast, it's unbelievable. I
Mm.
mean, it's a
It's
Christopher
all like
Nolan pick.
yeah. Yeah.
And funnily enough, actually, I was hanging out with someone who's a writer in Hollywood over the weekend, and they used to work at Amazon, and they told me about the process internally, how Amazon obviously has an algorithm to determine and greenlight a project. And
Mhm,
if you have a Zendaya, automatic green light.
mhm,
If you have a Tom Holland, automatic green light. If you have a story or a book like The Odyssey, automatic green light. But then there are other times where you may not have those things, and so you need a combination. It's almost
mhm,
like Pokemon cards.
Yep.
But if you look, they have a Christopher Nolan, The Odyssey, Zendaya, Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, what's his name? Matt
Matt
Damon's in
Damon,
this.
yeah.
Like, there are so many stars in this, so it's
Mhm,
of course gonna be a huge movie. But I looked at the data, they had 3 specific spikes in
mhm,
social media around this, and it was very coordinated. They clearly all orchestrated these events.
mhm,
There was the trailer drop, that was about 480 mentions that day. The presale, 440
mhm,
mentions that day, so on par. But then the crash was double. It was
mhm,
880 mentions from a particular cohort that I was analyzing.
mhm,
And you said it in the intro, it was interesting that IMAX didn't say anything.
mhm.
I think that's telling. I think why would they get was the crash bad for IMAX? I don't think so. I think I spend my days coaching communications teams
Mm,
on using data to make decisions. And that to me, the data says you don't need to get involved because I don't think the sentiment turned negative towards IMAX. I think
yeah.
the sentiment turned towards I'm mad I can't see this movie,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
that's exactly what you want in Hollywood these days. It's very hard to sell tickets, so I think they created a very special moment.
Yeah, definitely. The reason why I say they could have done something or said something is that to get more people on their side. So IMAX is currently trying to sell themselves to
Mm,
somebody, to a company, right?
mm,
So it's like if you want to show how much people love you, this is the perfect way of doing it, right? Like can't get us and they're mad that they can't get us. The other thing is they are only in a limited amount of cities, right? So
mm,
LA, New York, like San
mhm,
Francisco, major cities, right? They're talking about wanting expansion into other cities. Well, how do you get that? Is to show that people in the cities that you want to go to are there, right? So that's where it's like, you could be building up that sort of like knowledge of like the data for where people want you the most, and then make decisions, business decisions to like move in that direction. But certainly, yeah, nobody's getting mad at IMAX. It's not IMAX isn't the one selling the tickets, right? It's AMC, it's Regal, all the
mhm,
theaters, right? um so it's definitely cool there. I think the other thing that I've like noticed is just how much of a change it's been from even the last like 4 years, where like IMAX is completely just like taking over the conversation of like if you love to watch movies, you have to watch it in IMAX. And if you're
mm,
not, then you're missing out on something. And that's what I think they were able to do with this, where it's like you can actually go see very easily on this website what the different formats allow you to see. And then I saw like a bunch of people post about what an IMAX theater looks like versus the standard.
mhm,
I also think it's like really interesting that like um the movie has become so closely tied to that. Obviously, a huge reason for that is that Christopher Nolan, this is the first film that has ever been filmed on an IMAX camera for the whole like picture. There's been instances where other movies have filmed portions of the movie using an IMAX camera, but this is the first time that it's the full movie. So that just I think that's also like an allure to people where it's like, oh, what's the difference really going to be like, to go see a full IMAX picture? And that's like part of the marketing that's going into it, right? Like I heard Tom Holland, I think it was on the Amy Poehler podcast, say that um, because the camera is so large and so loud that it's very hard for the actors to like not pay attention to the camera filming them, which is like
mhm,
not a thing that they ever have to deal with digital cameras, right? Because those are just pretty silent. So it's another level of like showing like how much artistry is
mm,
going into the filming, but also the acting itself, because the actors are
mhm,
having higher demands on what they would
yeah.
usually have to do for other films.
Yeah, I mean, strategy, which I obsess about, is all about trade-offs. And they clearly had a strategy here to make the movie differently, to
Mhm,
give people a compelling reason to sell tickets. And that has trade-offs. Like, again, you have to pick the kinds of actors that can tolerate that noise and still perform at their best. Um, who is it? The guy who played Batman,
Robert
American
Pattinson.
Psycho. No, American
Oh, Christian
Psycho.
Bale.
Yeah, like, I wonder how he does with an IMAX camera because,
Yeah.
he'd be in his
Yeah,
own
right.
he had that reputation. But, all of this, again, it's a strategy. I think the crash it's not really an outcome, it's an
Mm,
output, and there's a lot of hype. And, let's face it, like social media and the media, needs something to talk about, and I think the
Mhm.
crash gave them a great story, and I think they manufactured that. But that's just an activity metric for me. There
Wait,
are
you
some
think that they made it so that people would not be able to get tickets? Or
100%.
that it would take longer? Interesting.
I
Okay, tell
think
me
I
why.
think they knew. I mean, these days, if you can handle the capacity. Like, we kind of know how the internet works, and
Mhm.
they only had 24 theaters where you could watch this, where you could
Mhm.
buy tickets for it.
Yeah.
And they kept pushing this premium thing so hard, and they only make it available in 24 theaters. So I think they had such an effort behind getting the hype, and then there is so much scarcity. There's a
Mhm.
high demand, low supply. The crash, I think, was inevitable, and that's why I don't think they stepped in. It's not like they were like, "Oh, what do we do? How do we fix this?"
Mm.
It's they probably knew this was gonna happen, which created more buzz, and then the scarcity. If you look at I mean, I work sometimes out of an office in Malibu, and there's a store called Kith. I'm not
Mhm.
a
Sure, yeah.
I was born in 1984, so I'm not up with all this stuff, but, like, the idea of lining up to go
Uh-huh.
into a store,
Yeah.
that's what they created a line out the door here for
Uh-huh.
this, but what's important is to look at the size of the room. There were not a lot of seats, there are not a lot of theaters, and I think that is very deliberate, but some critics are saying what I noticed in the coverage, and I was read up on the news articles about this,
Mhm.
the PLF sales are meaningless until the real regular ticket sales, the regular seats start selling as well. So this movie is going to be successful because it's an epic and it's probably going to win some awards and there's, a lot of hype around it.
Mhm.
But what I keep paying attention to is, can Hollywood get people to come to the theater? And you have to give people a clear, compelling reason. So there is a strategic brand narrative in Hollywood, not just in this movie,
Mhm.
to say, don't watch this at home, come watch it in the theaters. But we all know that our homes are more comfortable than some of the theaters.
Mhm.
So this IMAX thing is really a huge differentiator. But why did they only make it available in 24 theaters?
'Cause there's only 24 IMAXs in America.
But they could have also, I guess, yeah, with the camera and so on and so forth. I think if the amount of pushing that they're doing behind this, there are other options available to them.
But it's not a premium format.
Mm,
Like, even when you look at when you go on, like, the AMC app, and so in LA, where we both live, we have a dearth of, 70 millimeter, theaters, IMAXs. We have the Chinese theater, right, which is the largest IMAX in the world. So it's like we have a lot of options here, but they don't have that everywhere. And so I think it's part that where it's like, yes, you want people to, go to that format. But I think a larger point here from what you were saying is generally people only go to about 2 movies a year, right?
uh-huh,
So every movie it has to vie for like one of those positions, right? I would say from the movies that were coming out this year, the Odyssey was going to be one of those. It's Christopher
mm,
Nolan. It has all these like superstars in it, of course, right? This year,
mm,
we've had Project Hail Mary, and then we've talked about it here. Obsession and Backrooms have been like these two, horror films that like have broken records because all of a sudden young people are going to the movie theaters in numbers that they haven't,
mm,
in a really long time. Um, so then, we already had those movies. And then we also have, Spider-Man coming out, Avengers Doomsday coming out. So there's all these other films that are also meant to be tentpole films that are meant to get people out. So already I'm like, wow, people are going to the movie theaters way more than they had
mm,
like even last year. So that's something where it's like if we know that we're vying for people's attention, in terms of like what actually will get them to go to the movie theaters, like there's the you can push the premium format on them, or do you lower prices to get people to go, right?
yeah,
And I would have thought with like, horror films, Backrooms and Obsession and stuff, it'd be like, oh, we're trying to lower, prices. We're not pushing the, IMAX format for that because, you don't really need it. But with a movie like The Odyssey, I think that's why they're putting it so close together, is
yeah,
because it is an epic. And of course, I feel like most people wouldn't like really frown on paying, $30, which is like what you pay for like the premium format, to watch The Odyssey versus you might do for, other films that aren't, that big.
I think this is it's interesting you bring up the sort of uh, pendulum swinging back to in real life IRL
Mhm.
experiences. I think this is going to sound so airy fairy. What we all want is to feel something,
Yeah.
and that's what a movie is. It sells a feeling, you
Mhm.
know, and I remember distinctly, I'm not going to sit here and be like nostalgic and say, if you remember the movies that you saw in the theaters, it was because I remember what it was like to laugh with 100 other people. I remember what it was like to be scared at the same time. I remember what it was like to be wowed.
Mhm.
And there's just uh, so many great options for us to feel this with social media and
Mhm.
entertainment. And now you have it Netflix, which is a fantastic content library, and we have fantastic TVs. But you can't replicate the feeling of being in a room with a bunch of people who are really into something. And I
Yeah.
think there's so many social media posts and articles that I see about young people flocking to those kinds of experiences. And this is just one of those. And I like that you pointed out they could have made tickets cheaper just to make sure that more people will see it. But it's not going to increase the feeling. The feeling of, oh, this is
Mhm.
great value. How great. I walked out and it was $10. That
Mhm.
was a great feeling. But you'd rather walk out with, I paid $30, but man, that I felt something, and it's
Right.
that hype, and that's what IMAX can do.
Mhm.
But I really also like this tension. People always love a good battle. There is a constant tension between art and science, right? Like
Mhm.
in communications and marketing, it is a blend of art and science. But in Hollywood, it's this interesting blend of battle between art and business.
Mhm.
It's how do you a movie has to have a good degree of artistry to it,
Mhm.
but if it doesn't make money, it's not going to get made again.
Yeah.
And there are some movies that need to really really make money, and then there's not much substance to it.
Mhm.
I'm optimistic. This movie is showing a lot of promise,
Mhm.
and I like that they're creating a lot of hype around it. But it's a surefire winner when you have a cast like this. Like this is going to be a good experience. I can't see them messing this up, and I'm definitely
Well,
going
the
to go see it
question
in
now,
IMAX.
yeah, the question now though is, are they going to hit that billion mark? Right.
Yeah,
'Cause that's what, like, the big movies are. All the Avatars, most of the Marvel movies prior to this past year, that was the mark that they're aiming for, right? It's $1 billion, right? And then his last movie, Oppenheimer, which, obviously a biofilm about, a scientist, like, they didn't think it would reach 1 billion, and it reached, I think it was like, 700 to 800 million, right? So
mm,
close, but not, Batman numbers, right? So I think that's what they're aiming for with this one. And I think that's the mark that people are gonna say whether or not it is successful. Because I mean, we're still talking about Marvel movies not making $1 billion anymore, right?
yeah.
Because that was the Avengers, but they're hoping that this next one that comes out in the fall does, right? Um, the other thing I'll say is, there's that whole conversation happening right now with like indie movies, right? Where both Backrooms and Obsession are, low budget horror films. I saw this conversation. I'm throwing it in here because we're talking about the money and like what it means for like artistry versus the business, right? So there's a conversation that came out because the art director for Obsession basically went on Instagram and said, I was paid about $6,700 per month for 3 months to film this movie. Now that the movie is close to making 300 million, why aren't we getting any of the benefits for that, right? So you have people in Hollywood taking one of two sides, right? There's her side, which is, everybody in the crew and cast should get some of that money because it is so wildly successful. But then you have the people that like are more on like the business side of things that are like, well, the studio that and production company that like put the marketing in, bought the film, and like promoted the movie, this is probably the only movie that they've invested in that is actually making this amount of money, so they need this money to then put into like future movies. There is something there to be discussed, but it also shows that people are willing to go to the movies a lot more than they were before.
Mm.
It just takes, a little bit more of that groundswell movement to get people to actually go,
Isn't the movie going to be rated R?
probably.
I wonder if that also sets it back from being able to hit the numbers, that people are
Mm,
hoping for, because you are limiting the audience a little bit.
it has been rated R. Yes.
Anytime you think about a movie making $1 billion, we always think of Avatar and the
Hmm.
Marvels. But yeah, they just rated it R, and they're really pushing this IMAX thing. Obviously, Christopher Nolan, he's a defender of the artistic integrity of cinema, but he also makes massive blockbusters. They're clearly going for something quite massive here. People are projecting, from what I can see here, anywhere from 700 million to 1.5 billion, as 1 billion being the milestone around the world. I think it's going to be difficult for them to do so, because let's also put this in the context of what else is happening in the world. This is the year that you have the World Cup.
Mm,
This is also LA is about to have the Olympics. Things are getting
That's
crazy
2 years
expensive.
away, 2 years away.
I wonder just how
I mean, but the
much.
World Cup though, when does that end? Because this is coming out July, 17th.
Right around then. I think the World Cup goes for 6 weeks, starts,
July 19th.
June.
How funny.
Yeah,
So it'll be
there you go.
around the same.
And maybe,
um,
people will be on such a high that they're looking for the next thing that's amazing,
to be
and
fair
they'll.
though, Americans, once America is out of the World Cup, which is, probably is bound to happen, let's be honest, they'll stop paying attention to the World Cup and they'll be the ones going to see the movie. So I actually was wrong. The Oppenheimer reached 975 million box
So
office, so
close.
they almost made it, and it is the third highest grossing rated R film behind Joker and Deadpool Wolverine. So there are two instances of other R-rated films making that 1 billion mark.
Yeah.
So it is possible, and I think that is what they're aiming for. And based on this tally, the excitement, how much people are talking about it, how good the film already seems from the trailers that came out. Awesome. Okay, let's move on to lessons for marketers. So. Obviously, here, demand is the most credible signal. Part of what they've been doing is laying out various points where people can show that they're excited to see the movie. So they did an original pre-sale, which was I think like 2 months ago. They did this new pre-sale. They'll probably have another one, closer to the actual movie. But it's already showing that the numbers are coming in. People are excited to see this. So the expectations are going to be pretty high. What are ways that you can do that for yourself? Obviously, doing pre-sale tickets, early bird tickets for an event is always going to be a way to show that early excitement. How do you kind of make it so that people want to jump in from the beginning instead of waiting till the end, right? Like, I like what they did here, which is they paired it with their movie stars to show like, hey, this is why it's important to go watch it on, IMAX, to watch on 70 millimeter. And they each got their own little commercials and they did a whole marketing campaign around this early pre-sale and didn't just focus the marketing campaign on when the movie actually comes out. So is there a way that you can create marketing campaigns to sell those early tickets and have it be its own thing instead of waiting until the end? The other one is that show don't tell. So it talks a lot about here about how important it is to get on video and get, and talk about what it is that you're doing, right? So the fact that all the movie stars and Christopher Nolan went on to talk about this film and the format, what I liked about it is they are talking about IMAX, the camera, and what the movie like format is going to look like. And it's not just like, go watch the Odyssey, right? Like, obviously that's inherent in the messaging, but they're not focused on like the film itself. They're focused on what is going to make the experience of watching the Odyssey better than if you had just watched it on, a standard screen.
To me, this is about two things, like having a clear definition of success. When you
Mm,
have this many stars and you have a massive budget and a great story, this movie is going to be successful. It's any
mhm.
marketing campaign, you have to define what is it that we are trying to do. And I think that's why you see them making very specific moves. And like what you're advising for people to remember, like different tactics for talking about a pre-sale and whatnot. I think campaigns and tactics are much better informed when the strategy is much better defined and embedded with a clear definition of success. So that would be the lesson for me. The second one is also, if you really want people to follow your lead on the call to action, like if you want people to go buy these tickets, you have to remove the friction. You have to understand the customer journey. And that's why they're educating their audience on the difference in the formats. And that can be applied to so many other industries, whether you sell tech or retail products or whatever it might be, or travel. If you want to sell plane tickets to a new destination, then if people don't know about it, if they don't know what to expect, then you might need to educate your audience. So it's not just about getting viral campaigns to get engagement and clicks. That's an opportunity for you to create videos to educate the audience, to remove the friction so that the call to action is something that people will much more predictably take. Those are the two lessons for me.
Those are good.